Welcome to Tony at 12. I'm Tony LeBlanc, and today I'm in conversation with the Right Honourable Lord Mayor of the City of London, Michael Mainelli. And Michael is number 695 on the list. Michael, it's so good to see you, and many, many thanks for sparing me some time, and hearty congratulations.
Well, it's great to be back, Tony. As you know, I love appearing on your program, and I love speaking to those in Alderney, the Channel Islands, and I've gathered that you're getting quite a bit of a worldwide audience as well these days.
I have some American friends that tune in, and I think for the purposes of clarity, we better just confirm that you are the Lord Mayor of the City of London, not to be confused with the Mayor of Greater London. So you're in charge of that square mile.
Well, I'm very much in charge of the square mile, along with the rest of the team. These days nobody's ever in charge of anything on their own, God forbid. But actually, technically, the title is the Right Honourable the Lord Mayor of London. But that's an ancient custom, and it's far more accurate to say of the City of London.
Yeah, because I mean, you know, there was a time when there wasn't a mayor of London, wasn't there? You know, I can remember that when the Greater London Council was formed many, many, many years ago. Now, I have to say that I really enjoyed watching the Lord Mayor show, and there was no rain on your parade.
There was no rain. We had blue skies. The city of Zurich said that when they came to London, they realized it was all red buses, red phone boxes, and the color of Zurich they claim was blue, and they brought the skies over from Zurich. But I think we just had it here, homegrown, and it was wonderful weather. It would have been a great parade without wonderful weather.
Yeah, yeah.
Wonderful weather really helped. And we had some amazing floats, a couple of fun things in the parade itself. And really, everybody seemed to have had a wonderful time.
3 miles long.
Yes, it's 3 miles long when there's only the route itself is about 1.7. I've never quite figured that out myself. I like to say I know something about measurement. Yes, 250 horses, about 140 entries. We had all of the various liveries. This year was distinguished by the enormous city representation that we had from abroad. We had cities such as Zurich, Lagos, the very first African city to come in. Zurich sent 250 people. We had a wonderful float from Genoa. They actually danced around in their jeans. We had a float from Kiev. We had a float from Zhejiang, a float from Hong Kong. We had some Mongol horsemen, and we had an interesting and wonderful dance troupe from Punjab. So it was a very, very international show this year, and I was thrilled that so many people took part. We also had, I grew up, as you gather, for a bit of my childhood in America. I was always a fan of the Macy's Day Parade, and I wanted those big balloons that they have at the Macy's Day Parade. And I was unable to get one to navigate the streets of London, but the Worshipful Company of Information Technologists created an AR app. So you could just hold up your phone and you saw the balloon floating over the floats themselves.
It's a great thing, technology, isn't it? My only disappointment was that I didn't see you get in the coach and ride to the first destination, which was St. Paul's Cathedral. Unfortunately, football focus seemed to get in the way. Don't comment. Tell us about the blessing at St. Paul's.
Well, the blessing at St. Paul's was really quite moving. My wife Elizabeth and I get out of our respective coaches. We're introduced to the entirety of the sort of management of the cathedral. And we then knelt in front of the cathedral where Andrew Tremlett, the dean, gave a very nice, short, but still very touching and personal blessing. He referred to, of course, my connections with Gresham College, and therefore, in fact, tonight's my Gresham lecture referred to Christopher Wren and Robert Hooke being involved, and then gave us a blessing and tucked us away with a Bible to boot to make sure we had some bedtime reading. So it was a very moving ceremony there.
And then you moved on to the Royal Court, still in the coach. And what was the process of the oath of allegiance, Michael?
Well, the interesting thing about the procession from there to the Royal Courts of Justice is that really that's what it's all about. If the parade was canceled, I still have to get to the Royal Courts of Justice to swear allegiance on the second Saturday of November. That's the most important element of it. And when you get there, there's a grand procession into court number 4, where you are confronted by a bench of high court judges, led in this particular instance by Lady Carr, with some dear friends of mine also there, Jeffrey Voss and Maura McGowan. And they sit there in front of you looking very intimidating. You're terrified that they might bring out the black cap or something. Uh, and then they ask you to swear your oath of allegiance, which is a very brief oath that you will, sincerely and truly do the best of your ability, fulfill the office of Lord Mayor of the City of London. So it's a very short bit. There's then a session read about you, and then a very nice thank you to the outgoing Lord Mayor, in this case, Alderman Nicholas Lyons, the late Lord Mayor, as we refer to them in the city. Never quite
No,
seen quite do that, but that's what we say. That is
bit
convention.
gloomy.
The late Lord Mayor. And it's just a very nice ceremony. And then we go outside, and of course, because the ceremony has lasted over 30 minutes, we're permitted to have a little light refreshment before getting back into the coaches and coming home to Mansion House.
Okay, that was very, very interesting. Now, 2 days later, you had the Lord Mayor's banquet. And I have a question for Mrs. LeBlanc, because things happened on that day, didn't they? And she wanted to know whether or not you had to make a major revised table plan following the reshuffle.
Well, there was a teensy bit of reshuffling, but it wasn't that much of a major revision. I mean, our biggest thing was, was James Cleverly turning up because the invitation is to the position,
Yeah.
not to the post holder, and so it was, whether or not he would or wouldn't. And unfortunately, he was unable to make it. And then there were a couple of other minor reshuffles, but there was nothing major. There were about 700 people at the banquet, and it's the vast majority of them didn't move a jot. I myself really kind of you just have to shrug your shoulders. These things happen.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
We have an excellent team. I had a great time, chatting with the Prime Minister, which is certainly a great opportunity. I also honestly had a very good time chatting with Nick Lyons as he went to his last formal function until he returns to the city at the Easter banquet next year. I did have a bit of a joke, though, when I was talking about it later. I said it was kind of an interesting bit because we had four people giving speeches that night. We had the Prime Minister, who clearly had a hard day at the office. We had the Archbishop, who clearly had a very, very hard day at the Synod. We had the Lord Chancellor, who had spent the day at the office wondering if he'd still be in it by the end of the day. And we had me, who'd given up my office and had just taken to working from home.
So yeah, absolutely. So you were totally relaxed.
It was fun. It was
Yeah.
a very interesting dinner.
Yeah.
Everything went according to plan. And I must say, leaving mine perhaps to one side, all 3 speeches were very good. The Prime Minister's speech was a straight up speech on foreign policy. The Archbishop, Justin Welby, stole the show. He was really in excruciatingly good form, very, very funny, but also, heartfelt about our need for tolerance in the country, which oddly was also where the point that the Prime Minister had made. And then the Lord Chancellor talking about the importance of the rule of law. So it was just a very good all-round dinner with everybody, I think, in a fantastic mood.
That's great. Now, obviously, there's a close relationship with the government in terms of functions like the Lord Mayor's banquet. What about Greater London? Do you have to? Is there a relationship there in terms of interaction on ideas and things?
Very much so. It's like anything where you kind of got an extended family of the City of London and 32 boroughs, and then the GLA. It's going to be a complex relationship, and it is, but it's a friendly one. Everybody who works anywhere in local government in London, really, really wants London to succeed and to thrive. So there's no question about common will. That's a very good starting point. I think the second element is that because we do have 32 boroughs, no one is particularly preponderant. We, the city, of course, are located at the center of all of that, and we are technically not a borough. We are, as I made the point in my Banquet speech, we are the world's oldest continuous democratic workers and residents cooperative. That's what we
Yeah.
actually are. We have local authority powers, and we host a government dinner every year to celebrate all the hard work that everybody does. And we do that deliberately to bring everyone together. So I think all of that is in fairly good shape, frankly. Um, then of course we have the relationship with the GLA, with whom we work closely,
Yeah.
and then there are a number of cross London bodies, in particular Transport for London, where we also work with them. So there's a tremendous amount of interconnectedness here in London. Everybody pushing in the right direction, and frankly, that leads to, I think, a lot of dynamism in London. People say, "Oh, things ought to be centrally planned." Okay, certain things do, and transportation is a good example. Energy requirements, sewage; these are good examples of cooperating. But when it comes to the vibrancy that you need ground up, London is very, very strong. I think, particularly because there is this little bit of rivalry, and also a tremendous amount of goodwill.
Yeah. Yeah. Presumably, unlike a lot of local authorities in the UK, you've still got some money in the bank, have you?
Well, again, I would emphasize that we are not a local authority, and
No,
we have
no.
a unique
Okay.
position.
Local government.
Well, we're not even a local government.
Help me,
Um,
Michael.
yeah, very much a residents and workers cooperative. But yes, we do have money in the bank, and that's really principally because we've been frugal over centuries, and we invest well, and we try and increase the value of our land, which increase the value of taxes. However, that is not to be complacent. We are in very, very difficult times all round, as you can imagine. Inflation last year ate away quite significantly at anybody's savings. In addition, we have been stretched by COVID, providing during COVID. We put out monies to help the elderly, to be connected on mental health, on children. So there's a lot of spending going on. And
Yeah.
finally, we're undergoing a number of major transitions. One, we're trying to consolidate the traditional London markets of Smithfield, Billingsgate, and New Spitalfields on a new site at Dagenham. That's a major hundreds of millions of pound commitment. We also have the new Museum of London project with the GLA. That too has committed us to large amounts of money. And we also have an enormous commitment to prevent climate change in two parts. One, our estate is supposed to be zero emission by 2027. So it's only 3.5 years away, or not even. We're working very, very hard on that. And that's quite expensive, particularly as we've got a lot of older buildings. And then we've committed the square mile to being net zero by 2040. So there's a whole scale of commitments going on, and I must say we are definitely watching the pennies.
And presumably, this question of decarbonisation is going to be one of the major challenges for you in your year of office, and for subsequent Lord Mayors as well.
Yes, well, in fact, my first overseas visit will be to COP28 in Dubai, and we'll be doing a number of things there, looking at how other cities are greening themselves and going towards net zero. We'll be expressing what we've been doing. We'll be looking particularly at green finance and innovation in green finance. And so, yes, there's a lot. Climate change and green issues are high on any Lord Mayor's agenda these last 10 years. Although, as I point out, the city passed the first Clean Air Act in 1953,
Yeah.
and has been at Rio, Johannesburg, and every single COP. So this isn't a new thing for us.
Obviously, as far as you're concerned, promoting the City of London is one of your major functions. And up until now, really, we've always thought of it in terms of financial services, but you've got other ideas, I believe, haven't you?
I don't think there are other ideas so much as a recognition that our marketing may have been leading too much on just one foot of financial and professional services. We have a workforce here in the city of about 615,000. That was a survey done last month. And in fact, our workforce has gone up, I believe, 5% on last year. So we are, in fact, gaining ground, believe it or not. On the other hand, whilst they're based in the city, those workers aren't coming in every day. So we have particular issues there. Particularly, I would point to our retail sector.
Yeah.
Amongst those 615,000, we have 45,000 insurers and 55,000 bankers. So that gets you to 100,000. So the natural question for somebody like me, who's a statistician, is, what are the other 515,000? And it turns out that they're in a whole variety of areas. I would pick on one in particular, which is science, engineering, and technology, which comprises well over 100,000. So we've got as many more scientists, engineers, and technicians as we have bankers and insurers. And into that rich mix, you throw accountants and actuaries, you throw lawyers, naturally. We've got some very strong cultural and media organizations. So it's quite a rich mix. 8,000 of our 24,000 businesses are based, believe it or not, in science, engineering, and technology. So taking all of that into account, I'm trying to position us a little bit under my Connect to Prosper theme as a city that is multi-talented and multidisciplinary. And the importance of that to you in Alderney, or to you in Jakarta, or to you in Sao Paulo, isn't the numbers that we have. It's what can we do for you?
Yeah.
And what we can do for you, I believe, is we can help to solve global problems. And the world sat down 10 years ago and said, here are 17 big areas that we would like to have tackled. These are the Sustainable Development Goals. And so looking at the world as our client here in London, the one thing we'd like to do is to help our client. And so we're going to be convening on all 17 of those, a whole variety of sessions, really promoting London's problem-solving ability. But our problem-solving ability isn't just because we have the skills here at home. It's actually because we're very connected. I always say, Londoners are not smarter than other people. They're not dumber either. But what they are is they're better connected than most people around the world.
Yeah, yeah. Bit disappointing to note that in the 1970s, UK manufacturing was about 25%. It's now down to 10% in 2022. Have you got any ideas how you reboot that?
Well, this is where the statistician comes in. This isn't that unusual amongst advanced economies. And part of it is because the manufacturing processes themselves and the firms themselves have reconfigured. So they've taken what you might call the strict manufacturing bit out, and that's still manufacturing. But a number of areas that would have been vertically integrated in the large manufacturing combines of the 50s, 60s, and 70s have been split out or outsourced. So take, for example, marketing, take, for example, publishing, a lot of the HR functions, et cetera, et cetera. And we've, of course, seen the automation of manufacturing. So I've never been enamored of manufacturing as some sort of magical sector. Would you really want to be working in a dirty factory if a robot will do the job for you? So I don't get it. On the other hand, all those science, engineering, and technology companies I spoke about, what do they wind up doing? Well, they make demands on the manufacturing sector, and that's exactly the way that it should be. It's as if I was lamenting the fact that we didn't have reams and reams and offices, staffed with clerks stamping papers and typing things by hand. That's why we have computers. So if we want to be an advanced economy, we have to advance. So I'm not there, but manufacturing to me is, for a country like the United Kingdom, an important sector without question, and one that I think we can do a little bit better. And so I'm not being complacent. But what I want to do is advance across all fronts where we can.
Now, you've got 100 trips abroad lined up in this 12-month period. Tell us a little bit about it, because, from what I can gather, you're going to China, Japan, India, and the US, locating new offices abroad to promote the city, and all sorts of bits and pieces to do there.
Well, you terrified me there, Tony. It's 100 days abroad. When you said 100 trips, I was like, "Ow!" No, so you're right. It's about 25 trips,
Right.
And about 100 days abroad. So some of these are quite short trips. Traditionally being, say, the last 8 to 10 years, the Lord, and leaving COVID out of that for that as well.
Yeah.
The Lord Mayor has done is to spend 2 single weeks in China, 2 single weeks in the States, a week in Japan, a week in India, a week in the Middle East. So and between those 7 that I just outlined, that takes up just under half the budget, so to speak. One of the things I'm hoping to do this year is to perhaps visit Korea, because we have a Korean state visit this Wednesday, I believe. So there's things coming up, and we would reciprocate that. You have to react. I'm also trying to pivot a little bit back towards Europe. The FT made a big point of saying that I had vowed to return to Europe. I wouldn't over-egg that, but I'll be the 3rd Irish Lord Mayor, so definitely going back to Ireland. We've had a very good relationship with the Irish, and they've been enormously supportive of the United Kingdom in ways that I don't think people appreciate, really selflessly helping us. I'm also intending to visit, due to family connections, Italy. I'm also Italian. My wife is German. I'm a quarter German, so we're going to Germany. My daughter lives in the Netherlands, and we're looking at a trip to France, as well as, of course, going to Switzerland, which will be timed to coincide with Davos, the World Economic Forum. So there's going to be a very strong pitch back. And the EU ambassador to the UK, Pedro Serranos, is thrilled that we're making this very clear statement that Europe is a major trading partner of ours, the major trading partner when you look at it in the round, and that in no way is the City of London giving up on that at all. Perhaps my only regret is in all of these travels and things, I'm unable to knock off anything on my bucket list. At the moment, every place I'm going to, I've been to before, and in fact, most of them multiple times. So unfortunately, this travel budget just isn't going to allow me to.
They just get 2 ticks or 3 ticks.
4 or 5 or 6, yeah.
Tell me, sorry, how do you view the importance of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which I believe Great Britain's recently signed up to?
Yes, it's a great mouthful, the CPTPP, which I always blow. I probably go to bed rehearsing it too, so I can say it without stumbling over this tongue twister. But the CPTPP, the Comprehensive Trans-Pacific Partnership, is important without question. Firstly, if there was anything in the Brexit element, it's that there are other places in the world are expanding more than we are here in Europe, and we need to engage with them. On the other hand, the CPTPP it is a bit amorphous. It's quite a large grouping, and therefore it's important because it comprises a lot of countries. But the level of trade facilitation and standardization that it's likely to achieve is going to be quite slow. It's certainly not, rejoining the EU, which is an extremely well-formed trade bloc, and very much an open market and a common market there. So it's a long way from that. However, without question, this is a show where we have a great opportunity, I think, to shape it. I think the more that we put into the club and the partnership, the more we'll get out of it.
Yeah.
And so, very intention of playing ball and getting in there and helping.
Is it back to a way to get into a trade agreement with these various countries, or do you still need separate trade agreements to run parallel?
At the moment, it's as we're finding out what the CPTPP is all about. I think what we're going to find is that the trade agreements will run in parallel. But truth be told, I mean, that's not a City of London thing. That's very much a national government thing. And we're just behind the scenes facilitating whatever national government policy is.
Right, you've got other special projects lined up, one of which Robert McDowell tells me could be the Channel Islands.
Yes, and an announcement exclusive to Tony at 12. Yes, each Lord Mayor is given a regional visit to their home region, and as you'll gather from my accent, I could probably push to go for Sheffield. My parents lived in Sheffield for a while, but I didn't. And the officers asked me where I would like to go, and I suggested that it might be a really good idea to go to the Channel Islands, that the Lord Mayor hadn't been there in a very long time, and that I considered it as close as I could as a little bit of a home for myself, mostly because I love sailing around the islands and have enjoyed every visit I've ever made to Jersey, Guernsey, and Alderney. And so I said to them, why don't we do that? In particular, of course, we do have important business links.
Yeah.
In many ways, we sell with the Channel Islands and the other Crown Dominions, so the Isle of Man and Gibraltar, we sell a common product. People come to London and they may get something done and they say, well, I'll need to have a protected cell captive in the insurance sector, or I need an intellectual property box. And the local team here will reach in and go, great, well, we'll set that one up in Guernsey, or we'll set that up in Jersey, or we'll use Alderney for gambling regulation or whatever. And then off we go. And the client may not understand that the product is therefore a joint product with the Channel Islands
Yeah.
themselves. So I'd like to celebrate that, deepen those connections, and ensure that we're in lockstep with the islands on how we're promoting all of us.
Well, that's something really to look forward to, presumably sometime next year. And we'll all, like to see that getting on board. Now, the other thing that I found most interesting about your manifesto, if I may use that word, was the fact that you want to get the G20 on board in connection with space debris, all of that stuff up in space that's circling the Earth and likely to collide with bits and pieces. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes, well, I'm glad you mentioned the manifesto. So I've got something on mental health, something on smart economy networks, something on constructing science, moving offices to laboratories, and of course I have my ethical AI initiative. So there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
When it comes to space, my space protection initiative was really based on an observation that the space debris problem might be solved in large part through financial instrument, which I call a space debris removal bond. Just to give your viewers and listeners a little background, there are approximately 1 million pieces of man-made debris in outer space, particularly in low Earth orbit. There are about 30,000 pieces that we can see with a radar. In other words, they're greater than 10 centimeters, but below 10 centimeters can still be deadly, puncturing a spacecraft or splitting it up. What we've always feared, of course, is what's called a Kessler syndrome. This is when one piece of junk collides with another, and then they ricochet, and it becomes a bit like a fission reaction.
Yeah.
And the world is circled by debris. I think Sandra Bullock's film Gravity opens with a sequence like that. So it's quite dangerous, and we've seen some mini Kessler syndromes. We've also seen the Chinese blow up one of their satellites back in the 2000s, which I believe sent up about another 3,000 pieces. We also had a collision between a Russian and an American satellite, also in the 2000s, which I think had about 2,000 pieces. And we're trying to launch more satellites. So we need space. And the reason we need space is threefold to me. First is defense. You get a bit itchy and trigger happy if you can't see what your neighbors are up to. The second thing is the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals that I referred to earlier. 40% of those cannot be met without space. You need space for GPS, space for satellite monitoring, space for telemetry. And the final third reason is, of course, there's no point in throwing billions of assets up into outer space if they're just going to get shredded by junk. So we need to make sure that no more junk gets up there, and we'd like to clean the junk up that's already there. To ensure no more junk gets up there, I looked at the oil industry. In the oil industry, people put rigs up all the time, and governments require them to provide a surety bond that they can decommission the rig.
Yeah.
And if they go bust or something like that, somebody else, an insurer typically, will come forward and pay up. So that structure looked ideal for space. So we wrote a paper on this. It was launched at the International Aeronautical Congress in October, got wide acclaim. We're having an event here at Mansion House on the 5th of December to talk about it. And I'm hoping to bring that to the World Economic Forum. And the proposition is simple. I'm not sure if I can pull it off, but it'd be nice to have the G7 or the G20 basically say next year that they will be making these types of surety bonds, or as I call them, space debris removal bonds, a condition of launch from 2020X, say from 2029 or 2028. Therefore, galvanizing the industry and making people realize that it's going to come. The government's going to want to require you to have the financial wherewithal to get your stuff down if you haven't gotten it down through conventional engineering and reentry.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that makes an awful lot of sense, and you're sort of being proactive on it. Well, I know there's a load of junk up there already, but so often we sort of see things years and years on, and suddenly somebody says, "Oh, we've got to do something about it," and it's almost too late. But there we are. We're getting a bit tight on time now, but can we talk briefly about the Lord Mayor's appeal, because I know that that's part of your function.
Yeah. Well, this is my Lord Mayor's appeal badge, so thank you very much, Tony. I'd be remiss in doing my duty if I didn't touch on it briefly. The Lord Mayor's appeal has three charities on the go at any one time. We're always trying to be transformational. The late Lord Mayor was very much about national numeracy and financial literacy. I'm very much about mental health, and we're looking at homelessness as possibly our next subject. In the mental health arena, I was interested, given my science background, at improving the quality and the speed of mental health. So we teamed with a charity called MQ Mental Health, sort of stands for mental quotient, but MQ Mental Health. In turn, Oxford University and the Wellcome Trust have helped us, and we've raised £5 million to create a project called Galenos, Galenos, sort of like Gallon Open Systems or
Yeah.
open source. And what we're doing there is we're creating an ontology. I know that's one of those long words, the ologies, for mental health. That's basically mapping the entirety of mental health research and identifying the gaps and the overlaps. So that's one element. The second thing is we're offering what's called a preprint service in the research sector. We physicists had one that we began just over 30 years ago called archive.org. It's been copied by the biologists and the chemists, and we're hoping that this will do to mental health what it has done in those other discipline areas, which is to speed up the pace of research by about 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that will get going. We've added to that the 2.5 million that we'll be giving to MQ as well. So it's really almost a £7.5 million project for 3 years. It's going great guns. We've done over half of the roughly 100,000 papers that are being published this year. So we're well on track to achieve it. And I won't go into some of the details, but I got a heads up on 3 areas where we've made significant progress in speeding up research and in identifying an enormous gap, and also in identifying some research that frankly isn't quite up to snuff and needs to be redone.
So that's a pretty interesting series of projects, and I'm sure, knowing you, it will be highly successful. Michael, can I thank you so much for sparing me some time? I always enjoy talking to you, you know that. And, to sort of see you in your present capacity is a great thrill from my point of view. So many, many thanks for your time. And
Thank you, and I hope that I can convince the officers to touch down in Alderley and not just
well,
Jersey.
it's got to be a prerequisite of the whole trip, no doubt about that. Can also take this opportunity of thanking your assistant Jason, who's helped me put the thing together, and our good old friend Robert McDowell, who I've consulted on this one to make sure that we came up with some reasonable questions. Thank you so much. Wish you all the best, and Elizabeth, for this lovely year of yours.
Cheers, Tony.
Cheers, Michael.